Okay, and we're going live. We're unmuted.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We are going to stand with them, and not only are we going to fight for their rights, we're going to stand up for our rights here in our state, in our homes, and in our community. Because the future of labor's rights in the United States of America is not going to be decided in the courts. It's not going to be decided in Congress. It's not going to be decided on talk radio, and it sure is not going to be decided on Fox News.
For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
Good afternoon, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. It is Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021, and we're broadcasting live online and on the radio on WZZA in Tuscumbia, Muscle Shoals, Alabama, from the Spice Radio studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Tonight, we are talking to Tish Fox. She is the legal director of the Alabama ACLU about their lawsuit challenging the new districts. We'll also be talking about last week in Southern labor and bringing on Otis Berryhill with the Ironworkers Local 477 out of Muscle Shoals to talk infrastructure and apprenticeships. All this and more on today's program. So, folks, if you haven't gotten enough of us by the time we wrap our hour here on WZZA, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you can find us online, all the places that you can find people online, and we've got a handy link tree where you can find all of our social media links and podcasts, YouTube, everything like that. So you can go to linktr.ee/TVLR. That is linktr.ee/TVLR. And that's where you can find all of our links online. So I just sent a message to Montrell at WZZA. He is our great DJ over there at the station over there in Muscle Shoals, making sure that they can hear us. Yes, sound great. Okay, thanks, Montrell. I appreciate it. So some of you may know, but maybe you don't. But it's okay if you don't, because it was over in a flash. But the Alabama legislature approved new legislative districts. As ever, they are extremely gerrymandered, although, to be fair to the Alabama legislature, I guess, if we wanted to do such a thing, it's not as bad as the new Ohio districts, where Republicans won 53% of the vote, but would get 80% of the seats under the new districts. So I don't think ours is quite that bad, but Tish is going to tell us exactly how bad they are. The Alabama ACLU has filed a lawsuit against the state for these maps, so we wanted to bring her on to talk about these maps and their lawsuit. Tish Fox, again, is the legal director from the Alabama ACLU. Tish, thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. So, Ben, if you could turn her up for me just a little bit. I don't know if my feedback is a bit different from everybody else's. She's a little bit low for me. So I think most of the folks, Tish, know what gerrymandering is. But for the people that don't, could you give us a really quick rundown of what that means?
Absolutely. Gerrymandering is when a group separates and divides a larger group that it represents in a way that is intended to give unfair advantage. And there is racial gerrymandering, there is partisan gerrymandering, and occasionally we may see language gerrymandering. Basically, what you need to take away from it is that the pie has been divided up and everyone does not get the same size piece.
And that's, The phrase that's bandied about a lot when we talk about gerrymandering is politicians choosing their voters instead of the voters choosing their politicians. In Alabama, this really affects Democrats more than it does, or it affects Democrats more negatively than it does Republicans. But I think that when we talk about fair representation, I don't think that this should be a partisan issue, and I think that we should be able to look at any sort of gerrymandering and say, like, that's not like, it's not appropriate that that you get 50% of the vote and then 80% of the representation. Like that just, I think at a base level, people understand that. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, you're black or white, you understand in a Republican small r form of government that we've got, the representational democracy, the thing is that you elect representatives to do your bidding in the government. It's not supposed to be that they get to pick you. And so that's, people say that, oh, we're a republic, we're not a democracy. And I think that the distinction there is a bit like not meaningful in a lot of cases. But to the extent that it is, a republic is supposed to be representative, like the representatives are supposed to be representative of the people. And in so many places today, they are not. So, can you tell us what was the state of the districts in Alabama before these new lines were drawn?
Well, here in Alabama, the Republican Party has a supermajority. That means that on any given issue, the Republican Party has enough representatives that they can overturn a governor's veto. Now, here in Alabama, both houses of the legislature and the governor's mansion are controlled by one party. But the issue comes into play irrespective of the party. And in fact, there are places in the country where Democrats are in control and they gerrymander their districts, they get an unfair advantage.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Here in Alabama.
No, go ahead.
The population is
Tish, I'm sorry.
Is about 40% color.
Tish, I'm sorry. You were starting to break up when you started to say that. You were saying that the population in Alabama is 40% people of color. Can you pick up there?
Absolutely. But candidates of choice do not reflect the population. We have Alabama divvied up in such a way that people other than the representatives for a particular area are controlling their legislative agenda. For example, in Birmingham, Jefferson County is populated enough to have 5 districts, but in fact is carved up in such a way that it has 7, and rural counties dig in to Jefferson County and just gut the legislative preference of the people of Jefferson County. And Montgomery is similar, Huntsville is similar, Mobile is similar. And ultimately what we see here is that representatives basically sit and look at the map and decide who they want to be their constituents. And in fact, when we were observing special session, the chairman of the reapportionment committee said they invited each representative in to see if they were happy with their map, happy with who they were going to represent. And that's problematic.
That's
people
insane.
Should choose the representative. The representative should not be choosing the people, as you said.
That's wild. I did not know that they got people got these special, like it's like we were on the menu. The voters. Are you happy with the plate that we are serving you today? And this is bad democratically speaking, again, small d, even for the big D Democratic representatives. Why is that? Because if you have like an 80-20 district, and all of the districts are like that, or 65-35 or something like that, there's not a single competitive congressional district for the U.S. House of Representatives in the state of Alabama as of the last drawings. And that,
that's
like,
exactly right.
That's not good. It's not good. That there is almost zero chance that a Republican wins Terry Sewell's district ever. Ever. And there is almost a 0% chance that a Democrat wins Mo Brooks's district. And that's bad.
That's right.
Like, that's not good for democracy, for like our representation in the government. And I think that people should be more upset about this. And you know, we are also on conservative talk radio stations, and one of the hosts, his way of dulling people's interest in this is he acts like drawing the maps is the most boring thing ever. Like, every time he got during the session when they were drawing these maps, every time he would get a representative on to talk about it, he would act like he was falling asleep because he felt like it was so boring. And that's just such BS, because like I feel that he knows what he's doing. The people who he's bringing on know what he's doing. And it's like they're trying to pacify their audiences by, like, I mean, it's bad for them too that their representatives are choosing, like, it's not good for anybody. You don't get the best, the cream of the crop doesn't rise to the top. And it's just, I get very frustrated by attempts to lessen what an injustice this is, and that it just, like, it happened in 2 days. There was virtually, like, you know,
there was no conversation, there was
right.
no transparency. And in fact, if you look at what is discussed about the process, the legislature and the committee failed to do the due diligence that we know is necessary to draw maps appropriately. And look, here's the thing. When you look at the map of Alabama, you know that there are certain places where there's going to be a high population of Black and brown people. We know that. We know that through the Black Belt, there's going to be a high percentage of Black and brown people. But what we don't expect is that our legislators are going to pack as many Black voters into an area as they can to prevent those voters from having an impact or make competitive the districts around where the Black community is centralized. You see this happen in Montgomery. Remember, if you go back and look, there was a representative whose district was drawn in such a way that she was basically losing her core constituents, and she complained, I don't know how to represent these people. These people are not going to be open and interested in having me represent them. And the map changed. And when you pack as many people as you can into as small a district as you can, you are conceding that you fear the power of those voices if they collect and collaborate. And you also prevent new blood, uninitiated blood to come into the process. For example, we have a candidate who is looking to run for a district in Prattville. He's got time working with the governor. He's got experience dealing with legislators, and he knew he wanted to run for this district that did not have an incumbent. But the lines were drawn in such a way that he is now not a resident of the district for which he was planning to run. They basically cut him off at the knees so that he could not represent or step forward to represent a new or different idea of what Republicans should be here in Alabama. And it happens all of the time. The lines move when a competitor, whether it's Democrat or Republican, steps in and wants to shake up the scene, and they are drawn out of the district where they are planning on making their move. And it might only be 2 or 3 blocks one way or the other. But what we see is a cronyism of selecting who is going to hold a position, and then everything possible is done to dissuade competitors from stepping in and muddying the waters by making it a competitive electoral process.
Right.
And that's not what Alabama needs.
Right. So the new lines that were drawn, like I said, you filed a lawsuit against the state for these lines. What law do you believe these lines to be in violation of? What is it? Just the U.S. House lines, or is it state House and state Senate lines? Talk to us about the suit. What law do you think is being violated? What is it over, and what is your path to winning? Do you think you can win?
Well, we are suing not only concerning the congressional maps, but also the state house maps as well. As to the congressional maps, we are still concerned that District 7 has used race more so than any other indicator as the legislature was drawing those lines. And they are in violation not only of the United States Constitution, but Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act as well. Now, we know that there are other sections of the Voting Rights Act that have been nullified and are no longer operative. And Alabama used to have to comply with those sections as well. It used to be that when Alabama wanted to change its district lines, it had to go and get a review and permission from the Department of Justice, because they had demonstrated a complete and total inability to draw maps without inappropriately taking race into consideration. This is the first cycle where they don't have to do that. And
Right.
what we see with District 7 is that whereas all of the other congressional districts have only 1 or 2 county splits as they were pulling those districts together, District 7 has something like 7 or 8 or 9 county splits, because they were trying to take little bits here and little bits there to make sure that they got the right population count in District 7. And by the way, they wanted to get those periphery Black folks on those counties at the edge of District 7.
They wanted to throw them in. Yeah, they wanted to throw them into the District 7 so that they could vote, so that they wouldn't be voting the wrong way in their districts. They wanted to throw them all in one Democrat's district so that they can dilute all of their power into that one person, and not have it anywhere else, not have the challenge anywhere else. And you mentioned that the case that you were referring to is Shelby v. Holder, which was decided in 2014, maybe, at the Supreme Court.
14? That's right.
Yeah, at the Supreme Court. And what that did was, it gutted the Voting Rights Act for people that may not be familiar with that. And like you were talking, that was called pre-clearance. And I think it was Antonin Scalia who basically said in his opinion that they were doing this because the Congress was the law was ratified, the Voting Rights Act, and including pre-clearance, was just ratified by the Congress before that. And Scalia said in his opinion that, we're going to get rid of this because Congress would never have the will to do it otherwise because they're afraid of being called racist or something. And so, conservatives, again, like there's so much hypocrisy when you're talking about the Republican Party and the conservative movement in the United States, because they're always deriding activist judges who don't interpret the law, who try to put forth their vision for America instead of just interpreting the law. And in his opinion, he said that's what he was doing. I mean, it's astounding. And of course they don't care about that. They're glad that they can get Black people and Democrats out of power. And so so what the last thing before we let you go, how do you see your path to victory looking? I know that there have been some gerrymandering cases that have been successful and some that haven't. So how do you feel about your chances going forward?
Well, our chances going forward on the law are strong. Our team has done a lot of work to look at the population of Alabama, how it's changed, and what is appropriate in drawing the line so that there is proportional representation. And we are relying on the fact that the state has at least testified in the State House that they didn't do any of those studies. They didn't do any of that hard work in evaluating and ensuring that they were not packing Black voters in one part of the state or cracking Black voters, that is, artificially separating a block of voters in other parts of the state, specifically Huntsville. We are before a 3-judge panel. As you know, there are 2 other lawsuits going forward on the congressional seats as well. And we are already hot and heavy into the litigation process. We had a hearing today. We have hearings after the first of the year. And our hope and expectation is that the court will take seriously that the Voting Rights Act, intended for a very detail-oriented process, and the state just failed to take their responsibilities to do that process seriously.
Tish, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
Good night, all.
All right, thanks. That was Tish Fox. She is the legal director for the Alabama ACLU, talking about their lawsuit against the state of Alabama for their gerrymandered districts. Very important. It would be very good for the people of Alabama if they can win. So hopefully, I'm rooting for them. I hope you all are too. Let's go on to the next item in the agenda. We are going to be talking about last week in Southern labor. Last week in Southern Labor is a segment that we do every week where we look at Jonah Furman's newsletter, Who Gets the Bird. You can subscribe to that yourself at whogetsthebird.substack.com. It is a fantastic newsletter that aggregates basically everything that's happening in the labor movement in the United States. I'm friends with Jonah. Jonah's a good guy. And so he has allowed us to go through and pull out the important things, the things that are happening in the South. If you want to see what's happening in the rest of the country, you should subscribe to whogetsthebird.substack.com. But for what's happening in the South, you can just hang out here, hang out with us. This affects the South as well as the rest of the country. The first thing that we're going to talk about is under the in internal union politics, and this is a huge story. Absolutely huge story. The Teamsters have counted the votes in the election of international officers, and it was an absolute rout, with the Teamsters United O'Brien-Zuckerman slate creaming the incumbent-backed slate 2-1. And it's really hard to overstate how big a deal this might be for the labor movement, but the mainstream press is starting to get it, I think. At a minimum, we're likely to see a massive UPS contract fight, and O'Brien, in an interview, said that he made some very specific goals and a very specific threat. He said, we are going to be fighting to get rid of 2-tiered wages at UPS. We are going to be fighting for, what were the other things? The 2-tiered wages are a huge thing. Oh, starting wages from $14 to $20 an hour, as well as, gosh, there was one more thing. There were 3 things that they were going to be fighting for. They were very specific. And he said that they're going to be willing to strike if necessary. So these are very specific goals and a very big and specific threat. So let's hope they follow through on that, because it's very important to take advantage of where we are already organized, like places at UPS, so that the labor movement can go to the unorganized workers that are at FedEx, that are at Amazon, places like this, and say, look, You can start working at UPS for $20 an hour. Don't you want that where you're at? Let's organize Amazon. Very important stuff. Meanwhile, the UAW referendum is hot on the heels of the Teamsters election. Oh, and by the way, the Teamsters local in Muscle Shoals, 94% for the Teamsters United slate. 94%. So if there are any of y'all listening out there in the Teamsters local in Muscle Shoals, we appreciate y'all voting for that slate here on the show, and we really look forward to what y'all do. And if you ever need anything, be sure to holler at us. Meanwhile, the UAW referendum is hot on the heels of the Teamsters election, with voting closing on November 29th. The Toledo Blade looked at the referendum as voting winds down. Jonah said that his sense is that it's going to pass, possibly by a wide margin, which will kick off a campaign season in the union in preparation for their convention next summer. The referendum is on one member, one vote. Historically, the UAW has elected their international officers at convention, and a lot of people in the UAW want to be able to vote for their officers directly. One member, one vote. So that's what the referendum is about. Let's go to new organizing. There were 55 freight truck drivers with EPES Transport in Chester, Virginia. They are organizing with Teamsters Local 322. There are 11 drivers for Aramark Uniform Services in Savannah, Georgia. They are unionizing with Teamsters Local 728, and workers at Tudor's Biscuits in Elkview, West Virginia. They are organizing with UFCW Local 400. They marched on the boss last week to demand union recognition, and the boss called the cops on them. So, we love seeing stuff like that, absolutely. Bosses cowering before the power of workers. In union elections, there were 54 workers at rock climbing gym Earth Treks in Arlington, Virginia. They voted 28-14 to unionize with Workers United Mid-Atlantic Regional Joint Board. And 13 maintenance workers at Fort Bliss, Texas, voted 6-5 to join the Operating Engineers Local 351. We have several updates in the strikes and bargaining section. The epic John Deere UAW strike has ended after 5 weeks with an immense 10% raise and the death of a proposed tier of pensionless new hires. The final ratification vote was 61% yes, a flip from the vote on the near-identical deal presented 2 weeks earlier, which went down by 55%. The new offer had a bit of a sweetener, but it seems clear that a good chunk of the workers assessed that they had won as much as they were going to win in this contract cycle, which was a lot. In addition to the above, defeating a new tier that was proposed by John Deere, they currently have two-tiered wages. John Deere wanted to create a third, so they were able to beat that back. In addition to that, they also won back their cost of living adjustment, boosted their pensions, and got some improvements to their departmental quota pay system. And more importantly, they showed the country that you can strike and win big. They rejected 2 consecutive contract offers, more than doubling the money that John Deere wanted to put on the table. And they weren't afraid to buck their union leadership to do it. And so the next UAW Deere contract is in 2027. But we expect that this strike to feature heavily in the national UAW election that'll kick off in early 2022, presuming the one-member, one-vote referendum passes. Meanwhile, 14,000 grocery workers with UFCW Local 455 at about 110 stores in and around Houston are on the edge of what would be this year's biggest strike. These workers have been working under a contract that Kroger just went ahead and imposed late last year that changes their health plan, locks workers into a new wage scale, and apparently has stopped collecting union dues, according to a worker that Jonah spoke with. IATSE has ratified 2 big contracts nationwide, so this affects workers in the South as well. They have ratified 2 big contracts ending a months-long strike threat among 60,000 film and TV workers. And because we live in the dumbest possible timeline, the big contract was actually voted down by a majority of the voting members, but due to IATSE's electoral college-style voting system, it was ratified anyway. So luckily for the national leadership of IATSE, their next elections aren't until 2025, the year after the next contracts are up, but leadership elections are also delegated. So any would-be challengers are going to have a tough row to hoe because membership is not happy about that, about being made to work under a contract that most of them voted against. SEIU 1199 in West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio, representing 1,000 strikers at Cabell Hospital in Huntington, West Virginia, says the company's offers during bargaining this week have been getting worse, not better, as the strike nears its 3-week mark. UMWA miners in Brookwood, Alabama, head into their 9th month on strike. Good news, though, they had a toy drive, and every single toy that a UMWA child asked for was donated to them. So that is a fantastic show of solidarity among people in the labor movement and supporters across the country and across the world. Kellogg's and BCTGM, the union representing Kellogg's workers, began bargaining on Monday after a few weeks of deadlock and inaction. The meeting is a good sign, but the union reports that the company has not moved on any major issues, and they still want to take the union bug off of the boxes that are made in the United States at union facilities. Just a slap in the face to workers at these plants. Absolutely, totally disrespectful. School bus drivers in Berkeley County, South Carolina, held a sick out last week, and cafeteria workers in Wake County, North Carolina, went on strike last week. Wheelchair attendants for subcontractor Bags Inc. at the Orlando International Airport held a one-day strike with 32BJ SEIU Florida. These workers make less than $8 an hour. Contract votes at 2 Ingalls Run shipyards in Newport News, Virginia, and Pascagoula, Mississippi, did not go as the leadership planned. In Virginia, the members of Steelworkers Local 8888 voted down their contract 2-1 and is now talking openly of a strike. And in Mississippi, nobody knows what happened because the leadership said simply that they need to do a revote among the 13 unions at the shipyard. That sounds like it went down hard, but who knows? Who knows? So again, folks, that's what happened last week in Southern labor. If you want to see what happened in the rest of U.S. labor, then subscribe to Jonah Furman's newsletter, whogetsthebird.substack.com. Our next guest is Otis Berryhill. Have we got Otis on the line, Ben? Fantastic. So Otis Berryhill is the political coordinator and a training director for a wonderful sponsor of the show, Ironworkers Local 477. They operate on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama. They do a lot of work here. So if you're looking for a good contractor, you should call Jeb Miles for sure. You can reach out to me to get his contact information. And if you want to join the Ironworkers, you maybe should talk to Otis after we get done talking to him. Another sponsor of the show is the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. They represent workers in the TVA, the Government Accountability Office, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers down in Mobile. So we appreciate their support of the show. So like I said, Otis is the political coordinator and a training director for Ironworkers 477. Otis, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So there was an infrastructure bill that passed last week or the week before, something like that. And now, Otis, what I'm being told on right-wing talk radio is that only 10% of this funding goes to infrastructure. Is that right?
No, sir, it's not. We're actually, most all of us going for infrastructure.
That was my understanding. So I was very confused when I heard these people on my radio talking about it. So give us some broad strokes on the overall funding breakdown. Like, what are the things that it's a $1 trillion bill. My understanding that a lot of this, about $450 billion of it was already like kind of slated to be spent. So we've got $550 billion of new spending. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, around 560. Yes, sir.
So what are the priorities in this bill? What is it going to be funding?
Well, in Alabama, we're going to get $5.2 billion for roads, $225 million for bridges, $405 million for transportation, and 79 million for to build a network of electric vehicle chargers to facilitate long distance travel. And the biggest one I know a lot of people in rural areas are looking forward to is $100 million to connect every Alabamian to the internet, which is something that hard to believe in 2021 they don't have that.
Yeah, my parents live 40 minutes from what is now the largest city in the state of Alabama. They live 40 minutes outside of Huntsville, and the highest speed internet that they can get is 0.5 megabytes per second upload speed, which is like, you usually hear something like 1,000 megabytes, like in the city, and they're only 40 minutes away. I can't imagine what the people are going through in like the really, really rural places of Alabama. I mean, it's crazy that the disparity is so large, and it's crazy that we haven't done something like this before.
Yeah, you're right. It puts kids in a rural area at a disadvantage when they go to school. Because I know my kids, everything's on a Chromebook and all that. And when you're in a rural area, you're at a disadvantage as far as the education you can get without having internet.
Exactly. I mean, my sister right now is in college, and she routinely has to, she can't come home until she finishes submitting her assignments, especially if they're like bigger assignments. They take up a lot of storage. She has to stay at school until she can't do her homework at home. Like you said, that's a huge disadvantage to people to not be able to have these resources at their house like everybody else does. So it's a really great thing that. And so, what can people in rural areas expect to see from this? Like, what do you have any idea what kind of speed internet we're looking at, and what the timeline is for it getting everywhere?
Anything goes with the federal government, it'll go slow. It'll be a while before this money really starts getting doled out to the individual states. But I'm hoping that'll be one of the first things we do. That, if you look, Alabama has 620 bridges and almost 3,000 miles of roads that are really considered by the federal government to be in very poor condition. I know the people in rural areas seem to take a hit on everything worse than us that live in town do.
Oh, for sure. That's just about the way that it always goes, right?
I know that if you have a child that has to ride a school bus, I know when I was a kid, I rode one for a few years, and I didn't have to get up that early. But now, because of the routes that you have to take, because of roads, culverts, and bridges in bad condition, your child may have to be at the bus stop for the school bus at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and have to do all that time to get to school, in the same way coming back, because you can't take a direct route to these people's houses.
Right. And so, what about how is this going to translate into jobs and economic activity? Like, what do you think? So let's just start with the jobs. What are the jobs going to look like from this for tradespeople, and specifically for trades unions in Alabama?
Well, it should be, like I said, build more bridges and all that. Manufacturing should, it's going to be good, high-paying jobs, and people should get education on how to do these jobs. I'm not talking about just digging ditches, stuff like that. I'm learning a trade. It should be plenty of jobs open for people that want to learn a trade.
Right. Do the Ironworkers and the other trade unions have plans in place to ensure that their market share doesn't decrease as all this work flows in? I listened to, I was talking to some tradesperson the other day, and they were talking about that the risk of losing your market share is in the good times when you've got all this work flowing in, because if you can't match if you've got jobs and you can't, as the union, send people out to work them, then they're going to find somebody else, and then maybe you lose that position that would have been a union position, and you lose market share. Do the unions have a plan to ensure that their market share stays what it is, or even potentially grows during this period?
Yes, sir. 95% of this infrastructure bill will be Davis-Bacon money. I don't know if you know what Davis-Bacon is, but that makes on this government money that each company has to pay a certain prevailing wage on those jobs. So that's going to help us union people out a lot on that. It's going to make a level playing field when we bid against. But as far as getting people trained here at our apprenticeship, we're taking applications, we're interviewing people, and right now we have more apprentices than we've ever had that I know of. We have around 76 apprentices now. And like I said, as the jobs come, we'll bring more in.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Eddie Mitchell, he's our organizer. We're going out organizing non-union ironworkers too, to bring them over and tell them the benefits of being in the union are.
Right, right. And so the apprenticeship program, how does it like, do you take new apprentices just all the time, or is there like a certain open enrollment period? Like how does that work? Like if I wanted to become a first year iron worker apprentice, like what do I need to do that?
Okay, we take applications year round, but our school sort of works just like a high school or college. You know, you start a semester in September, you finish that semester in December, then we usually start a new semester in January and go to May. And as if we see that we're going to need some apprentices down the road, which, you know, usually know when work's coming up, we'll bring more in, interview more, and go ahead and get them started in our program.
Right. And so you said you've got 76 apprentices right now. It looked to me like the increase in spending for roads and bridges, which is going to be like, that's heavy ironworker stuff. That's a lot of work for y'all.
Yes, sir.
So hopefully you'll be able to get a whole lot more from a whole bunch of apprentices with this. And like you said, it's government money, so it's going to come to you slow, and you'll be able to build up capacity in the meantime.
Yes,
the apprenticeship what can people expect like what kind of stuff do they learn as an ironworker apprentice, and how long does it take?
It's a 3-year program. You learn pretty much everything from the ground up. We put the rebar in. We hang the steel. We put the sheets on the building, put the roof on. Most of the time, we're the ones that do the heavy rigging inside, like a manufacturing facility. We do the heavy rigging, set the equipment, do all that, pretty much the whole building. And industrial maintenance, that's a big part of what we do too.
Okay. And so what's the difference then? Like, what is a first year apprentice going to know versus what a journeyman knows? Like that, like how much supervision and everything like that goes into this the program?
Yeah, yes, sir. We never have just sent somebody on the job, say, okay, you're an hour. They're going to be with a qualified journeyman, and they're going to be right there with them, and they'll learn the craft from them. You'll learn on the job and here at the school. We have a weld facilities here. We teach welding, how to tie rebar, all that right here at the school.
How many hours of schooling, like let's say a week, could an ironworker apprentice expect to need to go to?
Yeah, our first years go 3 hours a night, 2 nights a week. And then when you get into the second year, we go to like a block system where you go 50 hours at a time, and you do that 4 times a year. You have to have 206 hours a year of classroom instruction.
Okay. And what's the pass rate of your apprenticeship program?
Well, we have some that quit. So, I mean, I'm working in for everybody. We have some that quit, but we work with everybody to make sure they know what they need before they become a journeyman. But this craft isn't for everybody. Some people come in, see what it is, and they decide it's not for them, and they may go, a different route.
Right. So do your dropout, is the dropout or the fail rate like fairly high, or do you get most people passing the program that enter it?
Well, it differs from year to year, to really tell you the truth, but we do have some that drop out, some that just can't handle the work or don't want to do this type of work. I mean, it is hard work.
Right. Oh yeah, no, I'm sure that it is. I don't know that.
But we're going to give you all the tools you need over here for you to be successful.
Okay, so let's talk about the benefit.
We're not going to throw you out there where you're going to sink. We're going to try to help you swim.
Right. Now, I know Jeb and Eddie and I know all y'all out there are going to try to take care of everybody best you can. So let's talk about the benefits then, which is what a lot of people are going to be listening for, like, if they're interested in this, how much am I actually going to get paid?
We start out anywhere between $18 and $20 an hour for a first year, and that's 70%. And one thing good about with us is you can come over here and go to school, and you can work too, support your family. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing right there. Like I said, after 3 years, you'll top out. We're topping out right around $29 to $30 an hour right now, according on what job you own. Now, when that $29 to $30, all of that money's going to go on your check, except for your working assessments. And I know on the non-union side, if you want good insurance, you're going to pay for it. And I've heard from some of our non-union guys that come over, that could be up to $200 a week for family insurance. Mm-hmm. Plus, you're paying for your own retirement right now. And that's good with us. No matter what contractor you work for, all of your money comes back here in your name. So right. It don't matter. If this company gets slow and you go work for another company, you don't have to worry about losing your insurance or starting a new retirement. It all comes here.
Right. And so let's make that. There. Yeah. I mean, let just to make that explicit, you're saying that your health care as a union iron worker is 100% employer paid.
Yes, sir.
No copays, sir. No deductibles, no premiums.
Now we have that copays and deductibles as far as I think it's we have $1,000, and then after that it pays 85%. But like I said, but nothing comes out of your pocket as far as your premiums go. It's all paid by the employer. And our retirement, it's paid in according to the number of hours you work and what age you retire. I mean, it's a really good retirement.
Yeah. Yeah, those benefits are certainly going to be certainly hard to match, especially coming in. What really impressed me is the high starting wage as a first year apprentice. I mean, you come in and you don't know nothing about ironworking, and that's why you're an apprentice, and you're already making $18 an hour. I mean, that's I've been where I work for 4 years now, and that's not much less than I make, unfortunately.
I mean, you've got to pay good money to get good help, and these
right.
union contractors know that.
Yeah,
And you get what you pay for. That's the same thing with a contractor and all that. If you have a contract that comes in with a bid that's so much lower than everybody else, there's a reason why that their bid's that much lower. Right. You get what you pay for.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's in multiple ways too. Like maybe you're not going to get as good a work, but also like the society that you live in is not going to be as good if people don't have enough money to like support their families and stuff. I mean
yes, sir.
The folks that have to work all the time to support their family and like they're just barely breaking even, like that's not a good life for those kind of folks. And so the something that always like that is different from other unions and non-union folks, it'd be difficult for them to understand this. The trade unions and the ironworkers, you don't work for one like specific contractor. Like you don't come on for like, I work for so-and-so. Like you're a union member and the union like dispatches you out to jobs when they get requests. How does that work exactly?
Well, when you're working, when you get laid off, you come over to the hall with Jeb, and we call what you sign the book. You put your name on the book. And then when contractors call, need men, say however many it is, we'll go by that list and dispatch those men out to those jobs. So I guess you say we do the looking for you. You don't, that's our job.
Right. And so how stable is it? Do people usually work most like all the time, 40 hours a week, or like what is the work life of an iron worker?
Right now, most of them are working more than they want to right now. And that's another thing about being in the union. If we don't have work here, our international, we'll call other unions and help you find work in other, in other places. It's a brotherhood. We're all helping each other out. If our local's if our local doesn't have work, and let's say Nashville does, they'll call down here and say, hey, if y'all got some guys that don't have a job, send them up here to us. And that's, we're a brotherhood.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is an important thing, I think, that people don't conceptualize when they're thinking about these sorts of things. If you're in when you're in one of these trade unions, like you said, you are an international organization. You're an international brotherhood. And so if work slows down in one area, you will be able to go somewhere else. And I spoke to a pipe fitter who got a job in California, who worked there for a year, made like $250,000 or something, probably worked a lot for it. No doubt he deserved it. But, there's work all over the place available for you. And if you want to travel, that's a great way to do it. But if you don't want to travel, it's still a great job. I mean, it's really, really cool. Like I don't even have that as a union member working where I do, because it's not like, like you said, y'all do the looking for your members, and I had to look for the union represents me at work as opposed to the union sending me to work. So that's a really cool safety net that trade union members have.
Yes, sir, it is. It is. And with this infrastructure bill, I think we're going to see a lot more, like you was talking about, people trying to make ends meet. The infrastructure bill is going to rebuild the middle class. There's going to be a lot more money for people, extra money to spend and all that. And it's going to be a really good deal. It's going to pay for itself. I know you talking about the right wing people saying it's not, but there's 17 Nobel Prize economists that's looked at this bill and says it's going to pay for itself without raising taxes, and should be, after 5 to 10 years, maybe even get a tax break for people like us.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that we are told by the boss, by corporations, by executives, is that trickle-down economics is what works, right? That if you just give people at the top more money, then they will benevolently give it to us at the bottom. Like that, it just doesn't even make sense when you say it, because everybody works. Like all the people, I don't know how people fall for it, because people that listen to the radio, like they're listening to the radio on their way into work, right? They know that the boss, especially like the head CEO, they don't care about them at all. And if they get more money, that's just going to go in their bank account. It's not going to go to help you. And so the way
trickle down offends me to start with.
I know. I mean, it's just like it's almost like you're pissing down my back. Like I don't want that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I wasn't going to say it like that, but you're right. And the funny thing about it is, if anybody listened to Reagan, he's supposed to be the father of trickle down. He implemented his first 4 years in office and tried to get rid of his second 4. And we're still using it nowadays.
And I mean, people across the country are noticing it. We saw that the Republican governor of West Virginia, Jim Justice, said, "Oh, well, we did all this stuff. We got rid of prevailing wage. We implemented right to work laws, and the people who told us the jobs was going to be there, the jobs ain't there." And it's like, yeah, because they don't care about you. They don't care about working folks. And the way to actually stimulate the economy is to do exactly what's being done right now, and frankly, to do a lot more of it. But you are going to get so much more economic stimulus from having good roadways, good public transportation, especially good public transportation, like you were talking about, the broadband, not only from creating the jobs of the people that are going to be able to do this, but from the ancillary benefits that you're going to get from the people who use it. I mean, people are going to be more willing to travel if you've got better roads, better public infrastructure. If you've got better public transit in cities, they maybe don't have to buy a car and they can go do something else, or they'll be able to get to work more reliably. They'll be able to keep a job instead of being late all the time and getting fired. The people will be able to do homework in these rural places, just like people in the cities can do. I mean, that is the way And that's actually been proven, because what happened after trickle-down economics was started during the Reagan era, working class wages stagnated while CEO pay rose. What happened before the Reagan era was we had 94% top marginal tax rates, we had union density rates of 30%, and we had wages rising with productivity. As workers made more, we made more. Okay?
You're right. As union membership went down, the people in working poverty went up. I mean,
exactly.
They went hand in hand with each other.
Exactly.
And it's a shame.
The graph, the Economic Policy Institute, who is represented by the Nonprofit Professional Employees Union, might I add, we've talked to them on the show. The Economic Policy Institute has a really good graph that shows union membership versus workers' wages. And it's just amazing how, like, okay, you've got membership and wages going up, and then you've got membership and wages going down while productivity continues to rise. And that really shows in one graph the best way to create a middle class is to encourage unionization and to join one yourself if you want to join the middle class. If you want to not be in poverty as a working person, you should join a union. And if you're a politician who wants to say that they care about working people, you should encourage unionization. You should be standing up for our brothers and sisters down in Brookwood who are striking against Warrior Met Coal. You should be for things like passing the PRO Act, which would help people to organize and eliminate some of the anti-worker laws from Taft-Hartley and things like that.
Yeah, I know some of the stuff I've seen at the Amazon deal on their vote. Now, the PRO Act would really help those workers in protecting them. And what you was talking about, we're not going to get the middle class back without bringing the unions back. That's just a fact.
It is absolutely a fact, and that's why instead of doing so much in electoral politics, I decided to get active in my union and do things like this radio show, help workers organize on the job, because I believe that that's the best way, the quickest way, the most immediate way, and the best way that they're going to make their lives better as an individual, but also to make our society better. Otis, thank you so much for talking to us. I really appreciate your time. We are out of time tonight. You've been listening to the Valley Labor Report on WZZA in Tuscumbia, Muscle Shoals, Alabama. You can find us online on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the places at the Valley Labor Report. Make sure you're following us, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.